Today, I want to talk about what this channel, Freebeat, considers to be budget electronic music gear in 2026. So let's shout out today's patron, and that patron shout out goes to Carl Izord. Thank you so very much for the support, and let's get started. Quick backstory. Back in 2019, I was pretty down on my luck. I was unemployed, just working odd jobs, and I knew I needed to have some sort of creative musical outlet. I had no place to set up and play my drums or anything, so I just had to get something. And I discovered the SP-404 MKII from Teenage Engineering. I picked one up for $90 US, technically 89 I want to say, and fell in love with it, discovered the whole world of electronic music, started this YouTube channel, and just kind of grew from there. Because a lot of the gear that I was using was considered budget to me, I started using the word budget in a lot of my video titles, and that rubbed some people the wrong way. I very quickly realized that budget is completely subjective and is different for each and every single person. And so I made a video discussing what was considered budget to Freebeat. I want to say that video came out back in 2021, and the conclusion that I came to was that I considered pretty much anything under $400 US to be budget. However, due to political issues, supply chain issues, the entire planet trying to recover still from a global pandemic, things have changed. And I've also changed. I went from having 1,000 subscribers to having almost 45,000 subscribers. I have built an incredible relationship with Zounds.com, which allows me to check out pretty much any piece of gear that I want, at least for a temporary amount of time, to use for the channel. I've developed relationships with companies like Arturia or Roland that, sometimes get me free pieces of gear, or sometimes get me firmware updates early for me to check out. Special privileges that I recognize 99.99% of the people watching this video do not have. Like I said, a lot has changed. And since so much has changed, I figured it was time to update my video and make a 2026 edition of what Freebeat considers budget. Now, the first thing to do, in my opinion, is to take something that would cost $400 US in 2021 and find out how much that would cost in today's dollars. And turns out something that cost $400 US in 2021 would cost about $502 US today in 2026. Now, don't worry, I'm not immediately saying that anything $500 or less is what I consider budget, but I do think that's an important number to have in mind. And by the way, I will also say, at no point in this video do I want to ostracize, single anyone out, or make anyone feel inadequate or self-conscious. That is not the point of this video at all, and I truly apologize if watching this video ever makes you feel that way. I just want to set a more recent precedent of how I approach a lot of this. So obviously, inflation is pretty crazy. Going up 20% in 5 years feels nuts. At the same time, though, there are pieces of gear that released pretty close to that 2021 mark. I want to say the SP-404 MKII came out in 2022 and launched at $499 US, and it's still selling for $499 US 4 or 5 years later. I don't want to commit and say that the 404 MKII is now a budget piece of gear, but when you actually look at what it provides and all the features it has, I think it gets pretty close, especially for that asking price and the fact that you can get that price down to about $400 US if you're willing to shop used. So while I'm not going to outright say it, I'm still going to keep featuring the SP-404 MKII very prominently on the channel, as it is something that I have absolutely fallen in love with, and the price refuses to increase. So it just gets to be a better and better value, in my opinion. Obviously, things like the SP-403 here continue to be budget. I think that's actually something most people will agree on. You can get one of these for less than $100 US. And in that same vein, things like the Korg NTS-1 and the NTS-1 Mark II, less than $200 US, tons of value there. I will say you can still grab these original NTS-1 models for around $100 US, which absolutely is a budget piece of gear. And it's interesting bringing up the Korg NTS-1 and the 404 Mark II because I think they're actually pretty similar in terms of how a lot of people use them. These are very common end-of-chain devices for a lot of musicians out there. They both have awesome effects that can apply to any of the incoming audio. Obviously, the 404 takes this a zillion steps further with the ability to sample, resample. It's got guitar input and all that. But at their core, they actually kind of offer like a finish your setup type experience. And I think the features they offer are proportional to the price. That's a very important thing as well. Is the value of the features offered proportional to the price? And on both of these pieces of gear, the answer is a resounding yes. Talk about another piece of gear where the answer is a resounding yes, the Woovbox and Woovbox Pro. These come in at less than $300 US, and the value here is just off the charts wild. Like, it really does provide a strong case for look at the features and the value against the cost rather than just the cost itself. So everything here on this table, including the lovely Microlab, pretend the 404 is out of the frame. These are things that Freebeat considered budget back then and still considers budget today. The reason the 404 Mark II is on the table is, again, because of that somewhat controversial $500 US. That's a lot of money. That's half of $1,000 US, which in my opinion, is decidedly not budget. $1,000 is a lot of money. That being said, there are other pieces of gear that cost $500 US that I would immediately consider to not be budget. For example, there's a lot of boutique guitar pedals out there that only do one thing. Granted, they do that one thing very well, but they cost $500, sometimes even less than that, but still not necessarily budget because it also depends on what you want out of your gear. You know what I mean? Who knows? Maybe the MPC-1 or 1 Plus is considered budget to you. That's a $600 or $700. Oh God, why can't it be? That's a $599 to $699 piece of gear. I don't consider the MPC-1 budget, but I know a lot of people out there do. It's just another case where we have to look at the features and how much value the piece of gear provides against its price point, and then what you are personally after. Who knows? The MPC-1 could be exactly what you're after, and you spend $699 US, you get your MPC-1, and you're done. You never have to buy a piece of music gear ever again. I'd say that's one hell of a budget piece of gear. Even if you spread out your music hobby over, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, and all you spent was $699 US, that's definitely budget. So I'm going to circle back to my personal opinions. I still want to hold to that $400 US breaking point for what this channel considers budget. However, I'm willing to make exceptions for different pieces of gear on a case-by-case basis. So I am going to consider the Roland SP-404 Mark II to be a budget piece of gear. And I will try to make sure, as I have attempted to do for the past 7 years that this channel has existed, to be transparent and let you all know when I feel something is truly worthy of being called a budget piece of electronic music gear. And I do feel that any piece of gear that earns that title should wear it as a badge of pride, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to save money and pursue this hobby / career / obsession in the most efficient way possible, both in energy spent but also dollars spent. So I know this might not be as cut and dry of a video as you were looking for, but it really does just come down to each individual, the features, the price, how you feel about a piece of gear, and what you are after. So the final conclusion of this video, I'm sticking to that $400 US price point, but after 5 years of change and progression, I'm going to put a big asterisk at the end of it, saying unless otherwise noted and discussed. Let me know what your favorite piece of budget electronic music gear is in a comment below. Remember, you don't have to stick to my standard, stick to your own. Let me know, I'm curious what you think. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like on it. If not, you can always leave a dislike, that's okay too. Doesn't hurt my feelings, just makes me try that much harder next time. Either way, be sure to hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Thank you all so very much for being here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.